This thing right here is the 2025 Porsche 911 Spirit 70, which is actually based on a 911 Carrera GTS, which has some really cool hybrid trickery, but this was pretty much meant to be a homage to the old days of disco and really colorful cars. And well, in today's video, I'm going to tell you guys everything you need to know about this car, from the specs, the history, some of the design, and much more. So let's go. And first thing first we need to talk about is the specs, because this car here is powered by a 3.6-liter twin-turbo flat six that also has help from a T-hybrid system, which a lot of you guys probably won't even know what that is, but if you guys watch my review of the Carrera 4 GTS, I'll actually put in the links above. Well, that thing and this thing are actually pretty much the same car, except this is a cabriolet version with only rear-wheel drive, but that was an all-wheel drive version. And well, this car right here is rear-wheel drive only. So you have that wild engine with the T-hybrid system, which actually, let me explain that to you guys now. It's pretty much where you have your turbo, both of your big turbos actually have tiny electric motors put inside of them. And the reason why is because, for those who don't know, turbos actually work using exhaust fumes. And let's say there's not as much exhaust fumes, then one, the turbo can't produce as much power, and two, you won't have as much horsepower. But with the electric motor, then the electric motor could constantly spin the turbo and also have instant torque, so that thing makes it way faster. And well, anyways, now you guys know what that is. Well, that helps you make 532 horsepower and 449 pound-feet of torque, which, to tell the truth, is quite bonkers. And even though it has 532 horsepower, it's not as powerful as something like, let's say, a Ferrari 296. It's still crazy quick, and I'll tell you guys that in just 1 second. But all that power goes through an 8-speed PDK automatic transmission via the rear wheels only to help this car rocket to 0-60 in a claimed 3.1 seconds. But as we know, Porsche always claims their cars are slightly slower than they actually are, which truthfully is kind of strange, but I guess that's just how they do it. And well, actually tested, this thing is 0-60 in around 2.7 to 2.9 seconds, which is quite bonkers, to tell the truth. That is a seriously fast 0-60 for a car that doesn't even have 1,000 horsepower, and some 1,000 horsepower supercars even can't reach 0-60 in the same time. But anyways, then you have even crazier top speed, because the top speed of this thing right here is 194 miles an hour. And actually, I'll put it down below what they are in newton meters and kilowatts and kilometers an hour, so that anyone in other countries can know. But anyways, those specs are quite bonkers. And actually, right before we talk about the range, I just want to tell you guys one more thing, because all this power and all this torque doesn't matter at all if the quarter mile is slow. And well, let me tell you guys, the quarter mile of this thing is not slow at all, because the quarter mile of this beast is 11.1 seconds. And well, quarter mile time is pretty much the king for supercars, because if your quarter mile time isn't fast, then your car's not really fast. Because yes, 0-60 could be whatever, 1.8 seconds, but if the quarter mile is not fast, then you'll be smoked by a car with a 2.5 second 0-60 time, but a faster quarter mile. And so, let me tell you guys how crazy this range is, because the range in MPG of this car is 332 miles range, which is actually quite good, because as powerful as this thing is, a lot of really powerful cars have terrible range, truthfully. But this thing has one seriously good range, and will also, you guys are probably wondering, what is the MPG? Because that also matters a lot. And well, combined you have 19 miles per gallon, but city you have 17 and highway you have 23, which overall is really good. But actually, surprisingly, even with the hybrid system, this has slightly worse MPG compared to the 992.1 Porsche 911 Turbo S, which you could see right there, which was the older version of the Turbo S. Now I have a new one with a hybrid system, and actually, hopefully, I'll be reviewing that soon. And that's actually the most powerful 911 in history. But anyways, This has slightly worse MPG, but still, it's better than most other supercars. And so now you guys are probably wondering, well, I've told you guys the range, I've told you guys 0 to 60, top speed, and pretty much everything else you need to know, at least spec-wise. But how much does this thing cost? And, well, I won't tell you guys that just yet, because we need to talk a little bit about the history before we get more into the price. And actually, I'll just tell you guys the short history of the 911, and, well, it all started in 1963. From 1963 to 1973, you had the supposed F-Series of Porsche 911s. And actually, the first couple of years, it was called the Porsche 901, which was pretty much the predecessor to the 911. That was actually meant to be the first 911, and if it wasn't for this car right here, would be called the Porsche 901 Spirit 70. But because Ford also had a car called the 901, sadly Porsche had to drop that name, and they only ever made, I believe, about 10 901s in the world, which is quite crazy. But just to highlight some of the heavy hitters between 1963 and 1973, well, one was it was kind of like the 911 Turbo S of today before 911. It was called the Porsche 911 S. And, well, that was the fastest 911 ever, even though the 911 was only around for 3 years. But anyways, that was crazy fast. I want to tell you guys actually what the engine of the 901 was, because that was actually powered by a 2.0 liter, I believe it was water-cooled flat six. But anyways, then in 1967, you have the Porsche 911 Targa. It was the first ever cabrio-like Porsche 911, and, well, it gave you open-air feel, but with extreme safety. And then, in 1972, it was kind of like the final iteration of the F-Series of Porsche 911s, the 2.7 RS, probably one of the most historic F-Series Porsche 911 in the world. And, well, it had the now iconic ducktail, all types of beautiful liveries that actually is kind of what inspired 911 GT3 RS, and much, much more. And then, from 1974 to 1983, it was actually one of the longest running generations of Porsche 911 ever. The G series of 911s was revealed. And, well, some of the biggest cars from that generation were, one, in 1975, the favorite Porsche 911 Turbo was revealed. I mean, that is like pretty much the pinnacle of Porsche design and speed, because that's one of the craziest 911s ever built. And they actually called it the Widowmaker, and you could probably guess why. But anyways, then in 1983, Porsche built the first ever full cabriolet 911, the 911 Carrera Cabrio. And actually, one of the most prominent features on the G series of Porsche 911s was the impact bumper, which was only required for US safety regulations, but it was a humongous plastic bumper that they added onto the front and back of the car, and that's one of the easiest ways to tell that it's the G series. And then you had, from 1989 to 1994, the 964 generation Porsche 911. That's when Porsche decided, why don't we name all the generations of the 911 with the number 9 at starting, which still I don't really understand. But anyways, you had the 964 from 1989 to 1994, and that was actually 85% new. Mechanically, it was pretty much a completely new car. Design language was still kind of old school, almost retro, but modern, and personally I think it looks really nice. And it brought in ABS, a retractable rear spoiler, and so much more new tech to keep up with the fastly growing electronic-based competition. And then from 1994 to 1998, probably one of the shortest running Porsche 911 generations, that was considered the final iteration of the water-cooled Porsche. That was the 993 generation. And some of the biggest things that it had, well, there was pretty much only one thing, or at least two things. One was that, well, it was the first ever 911 to introduce multi-link suspension. And two, well, you guessed it, there was a new model, the iconic GT2, which was pretty much the 1990s iteration of the original 930 Turbo. And actually, that was the last ever water-cooled 911, so that's probably one of the most iconic 911s ever made. The original F-Series and G-Series and 993 are pretty much the three most iconic 911s ever. And then from 1998 to 2005, Porsche revealed the not extremely loved 996 generation. Probably one of the least loved 911s ever, but well, that was definitely the most interesting looking. The main thing people didn't like about it was that if you look at the headlights on all 911s, new, old, and they all have these circular bug-eye headlights. But, well, the 996 generation brought what everyone called the fried egg headlights into the era, and that definitely wasn't everyone's favorite because Porsche was actually becoming close to bankruptcy. So that also wasn't great, but the Porsche Cayenne was actually the car that saved them, interestingly enough. But anyways, then that was the 996 generation, and then from 2004 to 2012, well, Porsche brought out the 997 generation. Probably one of my favorite cheaper, I guess you could say, 911s. One of my favorite older, like early 2000s generations was definitely the 997. And well, that brought back the, of course, beautiful bug-eye headlights. It doesn't sound the best, but still, they definitely look really, really nice and iconic. And then actually, the 997 Porsche 911 was the first ever 911 to come with, one, the PD automatic transmission, which is actually a brand new thing, and two, this was actually the first ever 911 to have the GTS variant and the Club Sport model, which was a special edition, one-off, that pretty much pays homage to the original Porsche 911, or 901. But anyways, then, from 2011 to 2019, you had the beautiful new 991.1 Porsche 911 Series, which was a completely updated 911 because, one, it was wider, it was faster, it was lower, and overall, it just looked more modern compared to the 997 generation. And overall, it was more low and more aggressive looking as well. And actually, that was actually the first time ever that Porsche had even the base 911 Carrera models have a turbo, because before the regular Carrera models just were naturally aspirated, but now every single 911 had a turbo except for the GT3 RS variant, which is also quite cool. And then, well, from 2019 to the present, 2026, Porsche has probably one of my favorite 911s ever, the 992 generation. And there was actually the 992.1 generation, which was a slightly older generation from 2019 to 2024, but this new generation is the 2025 onward generation. I'm not sure when they're going to end it, most likely around 2028, but this is the most high-tech and fast 911 ever. Not this model in particular, but the new 911 is the most cutting-edge Porsche in the world, or at least 911 wise, because it was lower, it's faster, it has quicker screens, and of course it has the extremely high-tech T-hybrid motor. So that is also really, really wild. And so I've told you guys everything you need to know about pretty much every generation of Porsche 911. Now, all I need to tell you guys is the price, or is it? Well, before I tell you guys the price, I need to talk about one more thing, which is the design. First, these headlights, I'm a huge fan of. Like I stated earlier, these beautiful bug-eye headlights, not the greatest name, but still, they look so nice. You have multiple, actually 4 of these nice, really bright LEDs, and you have 4 little nighttime running light strips there, which is also really, really cool. You have really nice 911 lettering coming across here. And actually, like how even the Porsche badge is covered in this, like, it's the same colored paint as the body of the car, which is really, really nice, and that's really nice and shiny. And you hop down here and you have some nice air intakes. This is actually a new thing that they only have for the T-hybrid models. This right here, check this out. So you have these little docks that could open or close at will. You could close them when you're going faster or you want to be more efficient, or you can open them when you need as much air to the engine as possible to create the most power. And then also I want to talk about these rims here, because these rims are seriously nice. Beautiful 5-spoke alloy rims, and some of my favorite 911 rims so far. They're really simple, but still, they're extremely beautiful. And actually, also, you have center locking rims. So the rims, instead of having 5 bolts to connect them like most other cars, they're actually center locking, which is also quite bonkers. And the reason why they did that is kind of to pay homage to the original 1970s and 1960s race cars like the Le Mans 917, the 917, and all those other race cars. So that is also really, really nice. And then also, this one is actually a cabriolet, and one thing that you'll notice that's really cool is that you see the strip, the 911 lettering kind of moves up like this, and there's a strip all the way up here on the roof. Because if you come over here on the roof, there's the same 3 strips going all the way across, which is also really, really nice. And overall, the main differences between this and, let's say, a regular 911 Carrera GTS is that, one, the paint, neo olive green, I believe it's called, which personally I really love this color. You have this beautiful strips here. The interior has a really, really, really nice, it's called, what is it? Apache, I believe it's called, trim. You could actually see a photo of it up there. But anyways, that's how nice the interior is. I'm a huge fan of the interior. When I first saw it, I wasn't the biggest fan, to tell the truth, but now, actually, after actually seeing it up close, to be specific, it's one of 1,500, which is quite crazy. But anyways, one of 1,500, all this really cool stuff. How much does it cost? Well, let me tell you guys that now, because this thing right here starts at exactly $254,000. But if you just buy one in the base color, which is actually this, not white, but this color, the beautiful neo olive green, well, it starts at $256,000. And the reason why is because that extra $2,000 goes to Porsche shipping. But you could buy one of these really sick Porsches for only $256K. And the reason why I'm saying only is because the Porsche 911 ST was around $290K, but with taxes and everything, it was close to $310. So that is quite crazy. But still, this is one seriously nice car. Plus, it's extremely rare, one of 1,500, which is even more rare than the ST, which is actually quite bonkers. The ST is one of 1,973 in commemoration of 1973, when Porsche came out with the ST model, which was a Dakar racing model. Well, this is even more rare. So I hope you guys like this video. Remember to like and subscribe to Xaaron Reviews, and see you all next time. And also check out all the rest of the videos I've posted, because there's a lot of really cool cars that I've reviewed. So I'll see you guys next time.